Good morning. I'm Richard Rose, President of Atlanta, NAACP, and I want to thank everybody for coming out and welcome. This conference is to announce several moves that include some that we've already undertaken and started, and a new attack on the Confederacy digitally. We will get to those, but let me bring up Gerald Griggs, first Vice President of Atlanta, NAACP, and third Vice President of Georgia, NAACP, who will be bringing comments on behalf of the Georgia NAACP.
Thank you, Richard, and greetings to everybody from State President Phyllis Blake and, of course, from the NAACP-Atlanta. This is a momentous occasion, but this is not the beginning. This is the culmination of a lot of work and the beginning of partnerships with other entities that have been doing this work for an awful long time. But to put it in perspective where we are, almost 3 years ago, Richard announced his war on the Confederacy, his war on the monument that stands in Decatur, which is a monument, the biggest monument to the failed treasonous secession of the Confederate States of America. And since then, we have outlined the need to remove all Confederate monuments. We've seen the results of the celebration of the Confederacy all around the South, all around the North, but particularly was brought direct in context in Charlottesville, Virginia, when white nationalists marched twice, and it ultimately ended in the death of Heather Heyer. Since that, we've been renewed energy to push this movement forward. And we believe that it's no better time to have this conversation, this social justice conversation, than right before the largest event in the world, the Super Bowl. As the country comes to Atlanta, the birthplace of civil rights, what I'm saying is the birthplace, the new birthplace of social justice, we have to send a message. And the message is clear here in Atlanta, Georgia, that we don't stand for hate. We don't stand for symbols of hate. We don't stand for divisive symbols that have divided our country from the very beginning. So we are going to announce today our partnership with groups that have been on the front line since the beginning, that have always pushed back against hate, that have always sought to bring people together. Me and Richard stood on the pinnacle of Stone Mountain just last year for our Independence Day to announce the need to remove these symbols of hate. We saw the symbols of hate rise again in our gubernatorial election, where you had a stark political conversation about the removal of these items. We have called for the removal of the DeKalb County Monument to the Confederacy, which still stands. We have called for the removal of Confederate monuments around the state, but now we are renewing that call, and we are issuing a directive to our elected officials, both here in Atlanta, but around the country. It's time to bring the country together by removing these vestiges of the past. We have been in this war a long time, but we will not stop until every single monument to the failed secession, the treasonous occupation, and the brutalization of people of color, particularly people of African descent, are removed, placed in a museum in their historical context. So as the third vice president of the state conference of the NAACP, and as well as the first vice president of the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP, we are calling for the removal of all monuments to the Confederacy, and we are prepared to bring our message directly to the world as the world descends upon Atlanta, Georgia, for the purpose of celebrating the Super Bowl. We cannot have a united country until we remove the symbols that divided this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. One of our collaborative partners in this effort is the Southern Poverty Law Center based in Montgomery, Alabama. And they have done exhaustive studies on this symbology throughout America. In Georgia, which I believe leads the effort to celebrate the Confederacy in Stone Mountain, there are 199 different monuments in 92 counties. Georgia has 159 counties. There are 92 which have these symbols and these monuments. And so we have work to do, but this work is about the uniting of America. United, we shall stand. Divisiveness must be a thing of the past. And I want to ask former Representative Tyrone Brooks to come forward. He is the leader of the Moores Forward movement, which seeks to highlight and seek justice for families over in Monroe, Georgia, who were part of this, victims of all of this campaign that has continued since emancipation to degrade and to oppress black and brown men and women in America. Tyrone.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much for inviting me. We have solved the Moores Ford Bridge lynchings in Monroe, Georgia. We've solved the case, and Maynard Eaton, who works for SCLC, emailed me last night the story that he's writing that outlines how we have solved it and why no one has ever been arrested or prosecuted. That story will be in SCLC's magazine and online very soon. But I want to thank Richard for inviting me over today, because Richard has been in Monroe with us for several years. I was assigned to this case in 1968, 2 weeks before our leader, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was assassinated in Memphis. I was assigned, actually, it was March 23rd, 1968, at New Zion Baptist Church in Macon, Georgia. And from that point on, we have worked to bring this case to closure. It's been tough. It's been a long haul. We've lost a lot of veterans in this movement. But the Malcolms and Doyces were lynched simply because they were resisting the Confederacy. They dared to vote in 1946 after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that African Americans could vote in all-white Democratic primaries in Georgia. And they went to the polls to vote. They were warned. They were lynched because they participated in the American franchise, our democracy. The symbols of racism were all around the bridge on the day that they were lynched. Governor Eugene Talmadge, U.S. Senator Richard B. Russell, and many law enforcement agencies participated in the massacre, and that will be outlined in the report. But today we are still struggling against those symbols, and we're still struggling to make sure that our children and unborn generations don't have to lead this kind of a movement in the future going forward. SCLC is where I was raised up. SCLC is my life. You wouldn't know my name if it hadn't been for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference bringing me in as a student and training me to be a civil rights worker and an activist. And I'm proud to be here today to represent the Moores Forward movement, which is an affiliate of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I was telling Richard a few months ago at his office out at East Point, his business office, how we changed the flag, which was the symbol on our flag. The Confederate battle emblem from 1956 was on our Georgia flag as a symbol against resistance. It was a symbol to say, we're not going forward, we're going to remain going backwards. We're going to continue to be the Confederate state of America. We're going to continue to let the Ku Klux Klan and racist hate groups control this state, politically, economically, and socially. It was Earl Shinholster in 1981, the regional director of the NAACP, who asked me to introduce the bill to change the Georgia flag, to take the Confederate battle emblem off, because Alabama lawmakers in Montgomery, led by Thomas Reed from Tuskegee, had led a delegation of African-American lawmakers to the Capitol in Montgomery, and they attempted to climb up on the Capitol dome to take down the Confederate battle flag that had been hosted up by George Wallace. They were arrested. They were taken off in paddy wagons. Earl Shinholster just happened to be in Montgomery that day. He came back to Atlanta. He came to my office at the Capitol. He said, Tyrone, you see those colleagues of yours are in jail in Alabama. You need to lead the movement to change the Georgia flag. That racist symbol needs to come off. I said, Earl, my boss, Jose Williams from SCLC, is already in the legislature. He was elected in 1974. Let him take it on. Jose was too busy. Julian Bond was too busy. And finally, the Legislative Black Caucus asked me to sponsor the legislation and to carry it forward. It took 20 years. The way we did it, and Tim McDonald is my witness, we went across the state of Georgia to create a movement. We didn't just work under the Gold Dome because we knew we were not going to change the flag by concentrating on lawmakers under the Gold Dome. We had to work the people of Georgia. We had to go into communities down in his hometown of Brunswick, all around Keysville, Soperton, Thomasville, Augusta, Warrenton, Washington, all those little country towns, Monroe, Social Circle, Rome, Cartersville, Toccoa. We had to work this state to tell the people of Georgia, demand that your legislators vote to change the flag. We had to threaten a boycott on the Super Bowl in 2000 to say, if you don't change the flag now, we are going to call a boycott. We had already picketed the Super Bowl in '94. We had already picketed the Olympics in '96. And we were threatened with arrest, of course, but we kept picketing. We wouldn't stop. And finally, Speaker Tom Murphy said to me, Speaker of the Georgia House, the most powerful speaker we've ever had in this state. He said Representative Calvin Smyer from Columbus to give me the word. He said, tell Tyrone, if he would just wait one more year, I promise you we'll give him a vote on the flag. I promise him, don't call a boycott on the Super Bowl. Because Joe Beasley had prematurely called for a boycott after Julian Bond called a boycott on the state of South Carolina. Joe Beasley said, oh, we ought to just call a boycott on the Super Bowl in Georgia. Speaker Murphy kept his word, and we continue to work. And thank God, when we called the vote, Governor Roy Barnes was governor. And he helped us get the bill through the House and the Senate. And finally, he signed our bill into law on January 31st, 2001. I'm giving you that history so that you'll understand what the struggle is going to be like to take on these other symbols. It's not going to be easy. You have to create a movement across the street among the people from the grassroots up. It can't be from the top down. It has to be from the ground up, Tim, as you know. And if you do that, if you educate the people will say to the lawmakers under that Gold Dome, you know what? It's time to do the right thing. And that's the way it's going to happen. It's good to have a news conference here and, around Atlanta, but you got to get out across the state. You got to shake those bushes and trees if you want it to happen. I want to commend Richard for taking initiative and bringing us all together. But in order to make this happen, you've got to create a movement. You've got to get out there and make people mad. They're going to shoot at you. They're going to call you all kind of names. They're going to throw you in jail. But this is how you do it. And I just want to thank you, Richard, for inviting me over to be a part of your news conference and to announce that on April 6th, we will commence with the 16th annual march on the Mooresford Bridge in Monroe to announce the fact that we have solved the case, lay it out with the help of Syracuse University, Cold Case Initiative, and then we'll move on to help Richard with these other symbols that still remain. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Tyrone. And in keeping with the fight on the flag, the Southern Poverty Law Center has committed to us that they will assist us along with NAACP branches across this state for this grassroots movement. We must begin to unite America and end the divisiveness caused by these monuments. I want to ask a longtime warrior in the field, Tim McDonald, if he would come up. He's past president of the Concerned Black Clergy and picks a good fight weekly, probably. Reverend Tim McDonald.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brother Richard. Dr. King's predecessor over at Montgomery said, if you see a good fight, get in it.
Amen.
That's what we're doing.
Vernon
Johns. See a good fight. Yes. Did a movie about him. Get in it.
Amen.
Not only is this the good fight, this is the right fight.
Yes, sir.
We have allowed our nation to memorialize hate and bigotry and racism, white supremacy and white privilege. We've allowed them to create an environment that sees it as acceptable. And so that our children, when they are growing up, have been taught that there's nothing wrong with these symbols of hatred and racism and bigotry. And it's time for us to rewrite that history. Amen. History is always determined by who writes it. Amen. All right. Yes, sir. The one who won or the one who lost. When it comes to these symbols, we've allowed the ones who lost the war to write the narrative. Yes. And they have written a narrative of hate, of divisiveness. They've written a narrative that causes and pits whites against blacks. And that's why even here I'm happy to see that we are white and black and brown and yellow, because I believe that's the true reflection of who America really is. Yes, the protectors of our democracy are the people who know that these symbols are not good for our children, it's not good for our culture, it's not good for our nation, it's not good for our democracy. And to continue to allow them to present themselves as legitimate, it falls on our plate. And the time has come for us to do the right thing in Georgia and across this nation. I appreciate so much what Tyrone just shared and the history that he shared, because I know the only way that this is going to really happen, we got to stir up people all across the state of Georgia. We use the black church, and that's why I'm here, across the state of Georgia. And many of these churches were attacked. Some were burned down because they were standing against that symbol of hatred and white supremacy and racism. Many of the pastors were threatened. I'm talking about the flag era, just a few days ago. The pastors were threatened. But when you're in the fight, and when you're in the right fight, which this is the right fight, you have to pay the price. Can't be scared. Can't be scared. You have to be willing to mount up with wings like eagle and soar for justice and truth and righteousness. 92 counties out of 159 have some symbol of the Confederacy, of hatred, of racism, of divisiveness. And the only way that those symbols are going to be removed is that there be a broad coalition, grassroots coalition of what we're building right here, that is willing to go from county to county to county, to make contacts in each of those counties, get the people mobilized. And the last time I checked, it doesn't always take a majority to do what's right. Often in our history, a minority have made the difference. In fact, no real movement ever started with the majority of the folk in history. No real movement that changed the course of history ever started with the majority. There's always been those few who were committed to justice, truth, and righteousness, and just fairness, who love democracy for more than just some utopian symbol, but who believe that it was what makes our country what it should be, makes our country strong. When all of us come together, black, white, brown, yellow, forgetting about any of those superficial barriers that they have created to keep us divided so that they can continue to perpetuate these symbols. When we break those barriers down that keep us apart, which we're doing here today, we will win. There is no doubt in my mind. Now, we may not win tomorrow. Be clear, we may not win next week. It took 20 years for that flag. But we will win. We will win. The scripture that I read said, and be not weary in well-doing. For if you continue to fight the good fight, you will win in due season. I'm a person of faith. Ain't nobody going to stop me from being a person of faith. That's what keeps me moving. That's what keeps me going. I believe that God didn't bring us this far to leave us now. And I don't believe that this battle is over. I don't believe this battle is ours. I believe that it belongs to God, the one who created all of us to live together as one. And so I want to thank you for being here. Thank Richard, thank the NAACP, thank all the other supporting organizations for being here. Know that the faith community, and I'm not just talking about the black faith community either, across the state of Georgia, who believe in what is right, we will work with you. We will go to these counties across the state. We will share information, because fundamentally I believe when the people know right, the people will do right. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you so much, Reverend Brown. Another of our partners in this coalition that Tyrone alluded to earlier is Southern Christian Leadership Conference. In fact, our first press conference on these matters were held at the Southern Christian Leadership offices with Dr. Charles Steele as president. He's on travel today, but DeMarcus Liggins, Chief of Staff, will be speaking on behalf of SCLC.
Thank you, brother. Good morning. How you guys doing? Well, first off, I want to make sure I do bring greetings from Dr. Steele. He did want to be here. In fact, he called me several times. I was running a touch late. And if you know him, you know what type of tongue lashing I got. We are excited to be here. He is excited to be working with you guys. He's excited that this movement is here in Georgia. Dr. Steele's been fighting monuments throughout this country for decades. Not just here in Georgia, in South Carolina, and people still call him, hey, he loves this. You know, our chairman of the board, Dr. Lafayette, was an original freedom rider. This is who we are as a Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It's hard to stay calm when you get so excited, because as the brother alluded to, this is what is right. You know, Dr. King said the time is always now to do what is right. We're talking about symbols, and we're talking about what do you remember in this world, and as all these people were speaking today, if you were looking out, there were children filtering through, coming off of buses into this building. Well, why are they here? To remember things that are important. To remember what are the things that this city and this country has said, hey, stop and look at that so you can see who you are. That's why we like to see the kids walk in to a place like we are here. But when you see a Confederate flag, when you see a monument to evil, it makes you wonder, well, what are the things that we are remembering? You're supposed to remember kindness. You're not supposed to remember killing. You're supposed to remember valor. You're not supposed to remember viciousness. You're supposed to remember Christ, not cruelty. That's why we're here. That's why we will not get weary. That's why Dr. Steele is excited to stand with you, brother. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll stay in this good fight. Thank you.
So, you know, one of the power of social media is sometimes you get unvarnished commentary from ordinary people. Across our Facebook page, I get people who claim that you're taking away history. History, no monument represents history. It's an honorarium of an idea, a concept, or a person. And when we talk about Stone Mountain, there is no historical context for Stone Mountain, period. No, nothing happened at Stone Mountain. Lee, Davis, and Jackson didn't ride up the mountain. Clearly, this was an honorarium for the Ku Klux Klan, spoken by none other than Helen Plain, who conceived the carvings that grace Stone Mountain. We should learn from Germany. Germany doesn't try to, they still remember Nazi regime. They remember Hitler. They remember Göring. But they don't honor the deplorable acts of these individuals. America should not honor slavery. It is the world, has been the world leader on the enslavement of African people. When other countries across the world had ended it, America still hung on. One of our partners, some of the other partners who are not here today, Alliance for Black Matters, most importantly, we have allowed ourselves with two members of the Georgia legislature. In the House, Renita Shannon. In the Senate, Nikema Williams. One's on vacation, one came yesterday and couldn't come back. It's kind of mixed up on the dates, you know, with holidays, everything goes awry sometime. But they stand with us to introduce the legislation that we hope will get to the point where the Confederacy is no longer honored in Georgia law. It is time to stop honoring the leaders of the failed insurrection against America, the leaders of the failed insurrection to maintain slavery. If I were a high school athlete, 5-star, looking for a place to go to college, I'd kind of think twice about coming to Georgia Tech or Georgia, both the short car rides from the largest shrine to white supremacy in the history of the world. Not just in Georgia, not just in America, but in the history of the world. To help us in this fight, we had some volunteers to call our office from a company, 22 Squared, who have a great concept to recognize and to elucidate and to educate America on what these monuments and statues mean. They were never meant to honor the dead, but meant to subjugate the living. We need to leave America better than when we found it. So if this group would you please come up, they will have a presentation for us. Because as Tyrone said, it's going to take a grassroots movement from Brunswick to Chatsworth, from Augusta to Carrollton, from all over.
Hello, we're from 22 Squared, and we're excited to introduce to you a digital initiative that we've been working on called Invisible Hate. Invisible Hate is a mobile experience and educational tool to help people learn the truth behind Confederate monuments. Now, admittedly, the initial idea for Invisible Hate was one that was born out of my own ignorance. I'm a Georgia native. I've walked the streets of the city many times and never gave a second thought to that statue or that plaque or what it really represented, not really knowing that there were Confederate monuments memorializing people with really deep and hateful histories. And I'm not alone in my story. There are hundreds and hundreds of Confederate monuments, and many people walk by blissfully unaware to their true meaning. So this realization got us asking a lot of questions. Could there be a really simple way to make people more aware, to give them a more accurate historical context? And could we use technology to tell the truth? And the answer to those questions became Invisible Hate. Invisible Hate's a mobile experience that uses augmented reality to visualize the truth and visualize the hate of the monuments that people walk by every day.
When hate comes from ignorance, giving rise to change means educating as many people as we can. To do this, we knew the technology behind Invisible Hate had to be both simple and accessible. We've built an experience based on data from our partners here today and leveraging technology for augmented reality that is found in recent iPhones and Android devices that is simple enough that if I was walking down around the Georgia State Capitol and I saw what was seemingly an innocuous statue of a husband and wife, I could take my phone out, hold it up, and on my screen, when I look through the lens of my phone, I would see a hateful quote from the figure himself about interracial marriage, saying that it is productive of evil and evil only without any corresponding good. What I was able to ignore as a statue from the past, I can now see through Joseph Brown's own words, is memorialization of an immoral and hateful belief. Not a statue that was erected in the mid-1800s, but a statue that was erected in 1928, 63 years after our own country's battle with itself to align on what is morally right and wrong. Having seen that hate, having seen the truth, I can now share it easily on social media with a single tap. See the truth, share the truth. Invisible Hate is a living project that will continue to evolve with new facts and experiences, but we look forward to our first release in February in conjunction with Black History Month.
22 Squared, our agency's purpose is Together We Give Rise to Change. So that means that we want to make a positive impact on people's lives, our communities, and the world around us. As a young Black woman, especially in today's culture and climate, it means the world to me to work in a place that not only supports projects like Invisible Hate, but that truly makes them a priority. We refuse to be colorblind. We foster an environment where everyone feels valued and heard, and also where strengths and differences are celebrated. More often than not, hate is born out of ignorance, and knowledge is power, and it really can be a simple solution. The more you know, the less you hate. So we're excited to partner with the NAACP, the SPLC, and the SCLC to bring invisible hate to life around the world.
As it is in the past, the young will lead us. You know, a generation ago, we were too stupid to understand the danger we faced. We just got out there in it, and so here we are again. As we know, social media is powerful. It tells us a lot of things. It can be deceptive, but it can be real. And I say to all those people who might come who hear this, see us on our Facebook page, those who have relatives, great-grandfathers, great-great-uncles who fought in the Confederacy, this is not about your ancestor. This is about the youth, the young people of mine. This is about the soul of America. Can we live together without hatred based on color, based on national origin, based on culture? We can be one America. We can unite America, but only if we end the Confederacy. Just as a demonstration with the other leaders in the NAACP, please come and join me just for a few minutes while we take other questions. If you would come on now, please. Yeah, all of them. This will be the grassroots movement that Tyrone talked about, from Douglas County, Paulding, to, as a gentleman from Newton, Rockdale. Would you come on up? I had a call from Hancock County last night. I hope he was able to make it. He's right here. Great. So, but it's going to take a movement all over this state and all over America. This is a fight for the soul of America. We have normalized racism to the extent that it seems to be okay to do voter suppression based on race. Right here in Georgia, we just got through a campaign that was vicious at times, but it's based on who ought to be able to vote. This is the time that America must stand up. Let us stand together and work against these monuments which continue to signal to people like Dylan Roof that it's okay to go into a Bible study in a black church and kill everybody in the church. That it's okay to turn loose killers of black people like Michael Dunn. Juries refused to convict Emmett Till, Medgar Evers killers, Michael Dunn, Walter Scott. It's time out for this. And so we stand together for that. We'll take any questions that you might have, and of any other presenters as well. Yes. Oh, yeah. Question. Go ahead.
Can you talk a little more about the Super Bowl? Are there any initiatives that are specific to the lead up to the Super Bowl?
Good question. As a matter of fact, we are planning a rally on the Saturday before the Super Bowl. United We Stand Shall Stand rally for all people who are interested in the eradication of the symbology of Confederacy, equal justice, women's rights, all of these issues that plague America. We're looking for a coalition of justice fighters to come with us, and let's just talk about how we can proceed together and change the soul of America.
Mr.
Yes.
Is that the only direct action around Super Bowl leading up to the Super Bowl here?
that is the only direction action that we have planned. Now, we understand there are other direct actions, and we applaud them. I mean, this is, if, as Reverend McDonald said, if you see a good fight, get in it. There's a lot of things that we can make America better, and we have to highlight all those things that continue to plague us, that continue to single out races and cultures and sexuality for ridicule and discrimination and oppression in America.
And just on the legislative side, what needs to change in the state government to make it easier for these communities to get rid of these monuments? What needs to happen on that side?
Well, there was a continuation of what was House Bill 650, which turns control of what happens to these monuments over to the local municipalities and counties. You know, DeKalb County voted to remove that obelisk at the Decatur Square, but was prohibited from doing so by the state of Georgia. I believe that all instances and all recognition of the Confederate States of America ought to be removed from Georgia's law. England does not celebrate Independence Day in America. Spain does not recognize when Colombia got its freedom. We have to be clear about what this is. The Civil War was a traitorous insurrection against America. Other questions?
Can I respond a little bit to what he said? When the Olympics came to Atlanta, there was just one gathering of coalition. But out of that grew several movements, several activities, because injustice always gonna do something stupid that causes people of good conscience and goodwill who were on the sidelines to become engaged and involved. And so every act, the first act will be that Saturday, but I can stand here and promise you that it will not be the last action.
Absolutely. Sure.
And what I would say is there are numerous organizations that are planning numerous activities, Super Bowl, surrounding the Super Bowl, and potentially at the Super Bowl. So you will get more information. But the purpose of this press conference is to let the world know that people of good conscience are standing up for all of the atrocities that are happening to brown and black people, and that the policymakers need to be focused on real civil rights and real social justice and not just murals.
You had a question, Lee?
Well, basically what I want to know is, you know, what you kind of discussed, the main message for the American public today is, I guess, to get rid of all those monuments across the country, and then also, I guess, how the Invisible Hate Act will help people learn about it.
Learn about it. You know, for example, there are 10 military bases named for Confederate generals. Amazingly, Benning, Gordon, Lejeune, Bragg, Stewart, Pickett, all of these, we should be celebrating America. You know, I remind people that when I was a kid in elementary school, every morning we recited the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, not a multiplicity of flags. The flag of the United States of America, which did not include the Confederate flag. We have to understand that all of these symbols were about normalizing, as Tim McDonald said, the change in the narrative. The loser set the narrative of what America is all about. America should not be about hate. We should live up to its creed that all men and women are created equal, all entitled to the pursuit of happiness.
And what do you say to the American public that will say, well, these monuments are here, just live with them, you know, that they feel, hey, I grew up walking by it. What's your response to that happening there?
Because those monuments continue to promote and teach hate and divisiveness. I remind you people that Dylan Roof was 19 years old. He's never seen a whites only sign or a colored interest sign. Yet he understood the lesson of white supremacy and black degradation. So these monuments, they were erected not out of honor, but out of dishonor, and they continue to do their job of teaching the wrong part of America how they should act, how they should treat people of color. And so America got to be bigger than that. As I pointed out, now there are no statues of Hitler, although he was an elected leader of Germany. What they have done is honor the victims. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I know the last year the Atlanta City Council was looking at a proposal where they would put these contextual markers in front of the Confederate monument, kind of tell the history of each monument. You guys know about that? Are you, is there any opinion on that proposal at all?
On some of those monuments, contextualization may be appropriate. But insofar as Stone Mountain, for example, is concerned, I believe they should return the mountain to what it looked like before hate took it over. We have the technology now to make that mountain look just like the granite outgrowth that it was before Helen Plain and the Klan decided that they were going to make this honorarium to the Ku Klux Klan.
So do you know how many Confederate monuments are in Georgia?
There are 92 counties and 199 monuments.
So basically the idea now is to sort of get everybody to raise awareness, and then once you raise awareness, to force the lawmakers, the state lawmakers, to support House Bill 650?
Well, House Bill 650 is the bill they presented last year. My personal problem with it still is a compromise. Every compromise in this country has continued the oppression of brown, black, and red people. We should not compromise on principle. It is wrong for this country to continue to honor a failed insurrection against itself that's based on racism.
Can you explain how the Civil War was to extend slavery, yet even in the Holocaust, how the comparison with, even though it was horrific and terrible act that lasted less than a decade, and how slavery lasted over 250 years, yet we do not have high schools that are saying, come go to a Nazi high school, come go to a Hitler high school. Can you say something along those lines?
Well, Germans, I get interviewed by German newspaper outlets, and the German population is still amazed and puzzled why we continue to celebrate the insurrection against America. They recognize Auschwitz for what it was, for the horror of what it is. As you pointed out, the Holocaust lasted less than a decade. Slavery and Jim Crow have lasted 400 years in America, and it's just time to stop. Anybody else?
What date are you all going to be launching? Have you gotten a date yet? And how are you going to launch?
So we're going to be launching in the Android and Apple app stores, and we don't have an exact date because there are approval processes that have to be done for those stores, but we do plan to launch in the month of February. You
do a press conference or online? How are you going to send it out?
We will be sending it out online and then coordinating with our partners to figure out the best type of event to actually launch the app.
Right.
Is the app just for Georgia, not for other states?
It is for the United States.
The whole
United States. And we at SPLC.
I'm right here.
Yeah, how many nationwide you did? What is it, 1,800?
1747.
1747. That's close.
Richard, can you have them explain how they would be helping in this fight, the SPLC?
Yeah, well, would you like to come up?
Sure.
Sure, thank you.
Hi, I'm Seth Levy from the SPLC. We're looking to support the effort through first public education. We've done a lot of research over the last 2 years about the location of where Confederate monuments and symbols are on public land, the history of why they're there, and I think going forward we just want to continue to put that information out, as well as help foster dialogues within communities across the state with people about what these monuments mean, why they're there, how they're symbols of white supremacy. Because to get these things taken down, it's really going to need to be a movement outside of Atlanta. It's going to be people all throughout the state saying, you know what, we don't want these in our community anymore. They need to come down and hear the facts about them.
Thank you. Thank you.
So do we know when we're going to start knocking on doors, going county to county?
Well, actually, we've already started movement, but we will be expanding as we recruit The NAACP has our state meeting is later this month, and we will be expanding this movement through that network as well as other networks.
I got to say one more thing.
All right, come on.
You elect the right mayor, and your fight becomes a whole lot simpler. You elect the right city council, county commissioners. So at the end of the day, it's what the foundation of NAACP is, voting. We've seen it happen in other states, Louisiana, but they've removed monuments because they had the right person elected who didn't fight against us, but found a way to work with us. So all across this state, we got to go into these small cities and small towns, and we got to help get the right people elected, which will make our fight a whole lot easier.
When all of us started in civil rights, we looked upon electing black officials as a way that our issues would become front and center. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. As Reverend McDonald mentioned, in New Orleans, the right mayor decided that New Orleans was not going to be a symbol of hate. We need the right mayor, the right county commissioner. We need the right governor in Georgia to help us bring America together, bring Georgia together.
But because of state law, the mayors really don't matter.
Well,
Look at DeKalb County. They couldn't do anything, so you've got to affect change on the state level.
Both. It's both.
But, and just to speak on that DeKalb County issue, the reason why the obelisk has not been moved is they have not found a suitable place. There is a process in state law upon which to move these monuments. What we're calling for is not only the removal, but a change. But even if the law does not change, DeKalb County has the belief and the legal opinion that they can move it. They just have not moved it. So what we're saying is, regardless of who the governor is, there are elected officials around this state, but particularly in this town that we sit in, that are failing to move. Removing one street sign is not sufficient when there are still monuments in this town that need to be removed. So we are calling on elected officials who are now trumpeting the Super Bowl and putting up murals to actually act on social justice issues now. So what we're calling on, that Atlanta lead the nation, lead the state, remove these monuments to hate immediately.
So have you been in dialogue with Mayor Keisha Lance-Bottoms?
we have not. We have not. We've been in dialogue with several of the council members. We started this, you know, the Atlanta movement started in under Mayor Kasim Reed, who was had not been very receptive to civil rights issues. Tyrone.
I just got to say this, Ricky, because I want people to understand something. Even though state law controls the municipal governments of this state, cities get their charters from the General Assembly, and state law supersedes local law. Remember Maynard Jackson. While we were carrying the legislation to change the Georgia flag, Maynard Jackson called me up. He said, Tyrone, I don't know when your legislation is going to pass, but come over to City Hall and watch me. I'm going to take the Confederate battle flag out of City Hall. It will not fly on any city property. And he said, if the legislature wants to sue me, if the legislature wants to take our charter, so be it. Maynard took the Confederate battle flag out of city government before we changed the state law to remove it from our flag. So mayors can become advocates. Mayors have to stand up and be local leaders and not just wait until it's election time to try to get reelected. The other thing I want to remind you, when you go to the state capitol, the largest monument to the Confederacy is Richard B. Russell from Winder, Georgia. He has the largest statue on the Capitol grounds. A racist segregationist, a former governor, U.S. senator who helped filibuster every civil rights legislation that came. He and Strom Thurmond were tag team buddies. Any legislation pertaining to civil rights and voting rights, Richard B. Russell and Strom Thurmond tag team. Richard B. Russell's quote from the Archives of Georgia says, "It's a manifold evil to let the N-word have the right to vote." Richard B. Russell, who fought to maintain segregated schools, his friend Strom Thurmond would come to Georgia and they would tag team around the state to keep the schools segregated. And Governor Eugene Talmadge, four-term governor, died before he could be sworn into his fourth term, but around the state of Georgia, he said, we will never let the ends sit in these schools with our pure white boys and girls. He's on the backside of the Capitol. Richard is on the front, Eugene is on the back on Capitol Avenue, and his son, Eugene, Herman, is right across the street from the front door of the Capitol. So don't forget these modern-day Confederates who just recently served in our government at the state level and at the federal level. Don't forget them.
And those are part of the overall campaign to normalize racism. Richard B. Russell has a building named for him in Atlanta and in Washington, D.C. So he was a great man. He just happened to be one of the most evil racists in the history of this country. That should disqualify him. Racism has been looked upon now, has been kind of normalized to be a political position, a political platform, political persuasion. But it's an evil against humanity. And these monuments represent and promote that evil. Any more questions? All right, we want to thank you all for coming. We will be, if there are some specific questions again to the team from 22 Squared, we will be available to take just a few questions. But thank you so much. Thank you for your attention, and thank you all, NAACP.